All right, we're going to get started. I know other people will be joining us here. So like I said, hello, nice to meet all of you. We're going to cover the roles and responsibilities of a nonprofit CEO executive search committee. We're going to go over the do's and don'ts. I encourage you to ask questions. Like I said, everybody's going to get a recording and the PowerPoint as well. The PowerPoint was designed to have a lot of information, so you don't have to take as many notes. That was the intent for that here. And we will get started. Let me, I guess, introduce myself at this point. My name is Dennis Miller. I founded the DCM Associates back in 2007 after a 25-year career as president and CEO of two major medical centers and as a corporate executive leading a consulting firm. I just had the desire to commit myself to helping other people and became a sort of a leadership board coach. I wrote my first book. I always tell people of Mrs. Fritz, my 7th grade English teacher, knew I wrote 2 sentences together. She'd have a heart attack. If she knew I wrote 5 books, she'd have a massive heart attack or a party. I'm not sure which one she had here. I founded the firm, and today, early on, it was myself and then one other colleague, Michelle Hickey. And today, I think we have about 18 people in 10 states, and we do a tremendous amount of executive search, but also we have an Institute for the Nonprofit Transformational Leadership and Board Performance, very affordable tool to evaluate and assess your own performance. One of the things I'm going to do for everybody that is participating today, you're going to receive, as a courtesy for me, a download copy of my book, a guide to recruiting your next CEO, the Executive Search Handbook. So I'll make sure this gets out to the recording, and you can download a free copy of that book for you. Lays out everything we're going to see here. So we have a lot to cover. Understanding the search process, how you go about identifying the right competencies and values of, and when I'm saying this here, this process could be the same whether you're recruiting your CFO or COO or Chief Development Officer. It's just the same process, but we do a lot of CEO searches in C-suite only. Activating the search committee, selecting a chair, who should be on the committee, things like that we're going to go over. How do you identify and screen candidates, conducting interviews? What is the do's and don'ts of the interview process? Some tips and suggestions on evaluation assessments and references, negotiating the offer, and very, very, very important about onboarding the candidate here. I ask you this time to go into the chat room and just put in if you have had an experience, either as a candidate, but has experience as a board member or as a volunteer board member, participating in a search committee. Have you ever been experienced with that, what that is like? So just if you could share into the chat room kind of what your experience has been so far with search committees. Anybody want to just, okay, let's see what we got here. All right, Bill, thank you, Bill. Everybody else want to air their experience with that? Not a problem. Okay. So let's kind of get started with the process here. Your CEO just announced that they're resigning or retiring, and now what? You know, you relied upon it from everything, and now what do? It happens. Many times it's going to be the first time you're on the board, you volunteered, you've been involved in your community. Let's see what we've got here. Yep. Okay. See you, Tom. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Appreciate that. And so now what? Okay. Could you mute your phones, please, if you can? Thank you. So these are some questions to ask yourself. You're about to know you need to do a search. Who on your team or board has experience with recruitment? And I don't mean just, Indeed, I'm just still meeting some people here. Who on your team has experience? Who has the knowledge or insights to identify the required skills and experiences that you're going to need to have in that role? Do you have that ability? Do you have anybody on your team, on your board? How likely are you as an organization, board, or whatever, to recruit and persuade candidates who are happy in their jobs to leave your organization to work for you? That's important. How likely are you to recruit and persuade candidates who are happy in a job that are not going to respond to an ad or Indeed ad or any ad to work for you? Who will do the actual work of recruiting, screening, performing initial reviews? And what will be the ultimate cost for taking on the task internally compared with the cost of retaining a search firm? A very important question, though, is can you use the search process as an opportunity to become a better organization? I think you can. I've seen it time and time again. It allows you to kind of sort of a self-reflection of where we are, where we're going, and it's a shock when someone decides they're retiring or leaving, but it's an opportunity also for reflection. So once you made a decision to do the search either internally or hire a firm, this is the process I think you need to take advantage of. One is, what are the challenges that the new person, what skills and experiences and competencies we need to address them? Skills and competencies are different. Skills are things that you've learned on the job, right? So you learn how to be, skills are things you've learned on the job. Being an accountant, being a nurse, being a lawyer, being a CPA, doing a financial statement, answering legal questions, things you experience. Competencies are things like inspirational leadership, innovative thinker, collaborator, brand builder, brand identity, influencer, all those type of things are, just let me know. So the answer is yes. The slides and the presentation will be presented to everybody. Okay, for those of you just joining, I see a question here. So that's the first thing is, and what's your future direction? And let's see here. Okay. What goals do you have to implement? And so that's the first thing you're important. It's not just, okay, Jane and John just retired and resigned, and now we're just going to look for Jane and John. You're most likely going to look for different competencies. We're all experiencing, or everybody's experiencing, a lot of people are retiring, and they've done a great job for you, but sometimes the competence and skills that you needed back then are not what you need today. Okay. It's a good time to do an assessment of your organization and board to determine your strengths and any areas of improvement needed to best, operate, practice. And why is this important? I have an expression I created. There's a lot of silly expressions I created. There's another one, but it's true that since we do so much search, every board wants us to recruit the superwoman or superman, which is great. But every superwoman and superman wants a super board and super organization. So we've got to land them together here. So if you're a board that's not been functioning well, operating well compared to best practices, and you want superwoman, superman, we got to make sure that you are improving your practices as a board or as an organization. So it can kind of put the two together here. It's very important to do so. One of the things that you're going to want to do, that we do, is you want to create not just an ad, not going to just a job description. We recommend you put together a customized ideal candidate profile that include the competence experience you were seeking, and I'm going to show you a sample a little bit later on. Okay, and that's important because, and it will show you that that's really important here to create not just a job description, but about your organization, attracting people to your organization. I mentioned this before, but these are just some of the skills and competencies that people are seeking today. Boards are seeking visionary thinkers, entrepreneurial spirit, people that it's not just relying upon public funding anymore from your county, your state, or federal government. There's not much money there, but to be an entrepreneurial spirit, seeking actually investors who want to support you and build a brand in the community. You want someone that's most important, relationship builder. You can hire someone to be your strategic thinker or collaborator. You can't hire someone to be a relationship builder. The number one competency skill that you have to have today is you've got to be able to be people person, relate to people. People need to earn, you got to earn their trust and respect. You've got to earn their confidence. There's a whole range of things, but you can't be effective anymore if you think you can do it by yourself. High level emotional intelligence, high level, it's not EQ, it's not your intellectual intelligence anymore, it's EQ. How well you respond to emotional, how well you respond to emotionalist, to people, be empathetic, to compassion, how you control your emotions in difficult times or how they see you. It's a whole point. A brand builder, how well do you talk about the achievements of your organization? I got incredible funny stories that people just don't do it. They talk about their organization, they talk about the size, what pros are there, but how often does your organization talk about its achievement, the impact you're having in the community? One of the things I always recommend to people at a board meeting, have a particular question every day to say, what's the value we provide in our community, have a conversation about what's our achievements, what's our impact. Okay. Collaborator, you don't have to go alone all the time on everything. You can find several organizations that are both passionate about something and help each other out. And more importantly today, it's about being an inspirational motivator. Challenges out there for people, but it's very important for someone to be a motivator and to make sure everybody feels they've been listened to, heard, and cared for, and feel connected, and you're going to have a high level of retention. Okay. This is a sample. This is just a sample of, and again, you're going to get this this is a sample of an ideal candidate profile of actually a CEO search we did a couple of years ago in Pennsylvania. The organization is called LifePath. And you can see what's done here was we didn't start with the job description. We started with the organization. A couple of photos to kind of reflect on who they are, compassionate organization. It talks about who they are a little bit. You want to describe a little bit about what you do, your values, perhaps your mission, maybe your vision statement, things like that here. This services you do, where you're located. Maybe click to show your annual report or strategic plan, or click to your website. Then you describe what we do is that's important first. And then you want to describe the role of the person, and then obviously you want to describe not only the role and the responsibilities, but you also want to describe what we just talked about, ideal qualifications, the kind of a commitment to the mission, experience and things like that here, ability to maintain a positive demeanor approach when faced with challenges, a little bit of the compensation package. Some states like New York require you to put the salary range in, some don't. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It all depends here. It determines that. And I guess the determining factor is what your salary is, and long as it's competitive. And so you want to kind of see if people are interested in your organization first, but then you want to find out what their salary requirements are, and then to see if it's possible fit here. Okay. And then just in our case, you want to have somebody who, if they see the ideal profile, who do they respond to? And that's kind of what we do. All right, so you've activated the search committee. It certainly requires, any effective search requires the balancing of long-term needs with urgency to recruit the right candidate. Your search committee should have an efficient process from start to finish, and I'd say this here. Let's talk about who should be on the committee, okay? I think should be your board members. It's very possible that you have someone in your community that may have strong HR experience or experience with hiring people, or someone in your community that you may want to add possibly. I generally do not recommend staff people to be on the committee, particularly for a CEO search. It can cause potential problems, which I'm not going to get into right now. I think you do want to get a staff involved in the process in terms of having input when you make a decision, perhaps, but not sitting on the committee. And so you want to make sure, and they say, what's the right size of the committee? Well, I've seen search committees of 10 people or 3. My Depends upon the size of your board, but I'd say anywhere from 5 to 7 is probably maximum. I see 3 to 5, which is fine. Okay. So a couple of things. Now that you have your committee, you're activating it. Does everyone agree on the profile? Does everyone agree that, hey, this is the competence and this is the expectations, and this is what we require of our next CEO? Is everybody on the same page? Okay. Has the committee agreed upon your strategic vision, where you're headed? Have you made a decision to retain a search firm or not? We'll talk about that a little bit here. Have you decided upon the salary and benefit package you're willing to offer? Have you done a salary comparison of comparable organizations here? How will you publicly announce the search? How often do you plan to meet as a search committee? How many candidates do you expect to interview? What's the time frame you think for starting the search to make an offer to start date for next year? What's the time frame you have here? And have you developed a consensus on your process and how you're going to keep the board involved here? Okay. Just to stop here for a second here, does anybody have any questions so far? Put them in the chat room, and I think if you have a question, other people may probably have thinking the same thing. Or just so if you have a question about anything at this stage of the game, just put them into the chat room. I'll take a break here for a second. I'm an iced tea drinker all day long, so I'll have a little iced tea. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat room. Okay. A key part of a search committee is selecting a chair. Very important. He or she needs to be highly respected and trusted member of the board. I do say it's a mandatory, it should be someone who's on your board. They need to be a strong leader with excellent communication skills, clearly a consensus builder, keep everybody on the committee and the board involved of the process here. Good listener and collaborate with other members of the committee. You want everybody to have a chance to have their voices, opinions, and important to control the flow of discussion, not allow any one member to dominate it. So one of the questions is about time frame. Okay, can I discuss realistic time frames? I'd say on average, it's probably we use a timetable of about 90 to 120 days. So I'm just making something up here. If it was, you started something March 1st, March, April, May, you should have a candidate selected by June, maybe May. We've seen, sometimes it takes 6 months. It depends upon how well you're prepared. And in the committee, we had experience of like 10 people on a search committee or 12 on a search committee, and it was just, a lot. So, but a timetable should be, 3 or 4 months if it's from start to finish. On average, I've seen a search take place in 7 weeks, which is very unusual. But I'd say on average about 3 or 4 months. The challenge that you can have, making it longer, depends upon your organization's niche. If you have a very specific niche, not a general niche, like you're not a general provider of intellectual development, disability service, or behavioral health care, or addiction, or children's services, social services, or food bank. If you have some kind of specific niche about something, after school program for kids or something that's a little different, it could take a little while to find the people that you're looking for. And it really depends also. I'm giving you my perspective as the owner of a search firm. When you do it yourself, the question is how many on your search committee or in your board will have the time to do the outreach. Where the rubber hits the road on this whole search process, and where a search firm comes in, and I'll explain it to you, is you can develop the profile by yourself. You could, absolutely you can. You can interview candidates by yourself. The challenge for doing it without a search firm is clearly, how are you going to identify candidates for the outreach? Who's doing the outreach? Who knows the trade associations in your state? Who knows the players in your state? Who knows everything? Who has the time to outreach to them? That's the question. And I've seen it where people say, oh, we can do it ourselves. And then it takes them 6 or 8 months or then they come back to a search firm, things like that. So that's kind of the process here. Sometimes people ask me, can a former board chair be on the committee? I'd say yes. However, we're going to say, however, it must be, the search committee must be made of people that have forward thinking, not yesterday thinking. This is going forward here. So sometimes you could bring back somebody who's, search board chair of 10 years ago, who was fabulous, he or she, but they may be not on the same page as you, or thinking about, they understand what they need today compared to what they need yesterday, and that could be a problem. What are the responsibilities of the search committee chair? Certainly, the community, just like anything else, like being a chair of the board, communicate to the trustees and especially the chair. Sometimes the search committee chair is different than the board chair. Sometimes it's not, but certainly communicate. Recruit and select people to be on the committee. Establish a committee structure, provide leadership to the committee. Obviously, develop an agenda and time frames. We just talked about it. What's in the agenda, time frames? How are we going to organize ourselves? People like us, our search firm, we help you with all this step here, but that's a decision for you and others as well. How are you going to create a system for recruiting people? How are we going to do that? How are we going to schedule interviewing, screening, selecting candidates? I say this to everybody: if you're going to be on the search committee, you can't be, well, I can't interview this person. I don't have the time. You got to either be on the committee and interview everybody, or not be on the committee. That's our recommendation here. Really, again, facilitate with the search firm use one, the number of candidates to be interviewed. Our general thing, what we do on average, is somewhere between what we would present to a search committee is, on average, we talk about 6 candidates. Sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's 4, depending upon it. But I'd say 4 to, someplace 6 on average candidates you should be thinking about. That's what the search committee should prevent you. Interviewing, you might interview 12, 20, 18 people. You're doing it by yourself. You interview a lot of people here. Okay. Again, reference check is a very important. We'll talk about that in a second here, but certainly the terms of compensation have been, approved. Make sure all candidates that were not selected were contacted, and develop a transition plan for the new appointed CEO. Those are responsibilities of the committee. How do you go about identifying screening candidates? Well, I think you turn your attention to develop a target. State, regional, county, national trade associations. That's a possibility. Looking at their membership. GuideStar is a organization. It's part of Candid now. GuideStar collects all the 990s of all the nonprofits around the country. It's possibly look at organizations in your area or size. LinkedIn profiles. Everybody who's a sort of a professional today has some form, usually a LinkedIn profile. You can find people on LinkedIn. Current nonprofit leadership. You talk to people in the community that you're all here. And chambers of commerce always have some form of nonprofit roundtable, nonprofit committee, but don't expect your organization to have a database of candidates like a search firm like ours will have, and know how to identify candidates, all that stuff for you. But that's how these are some suggestions of identifying and screening candidates. Every organization that you're going to try to look for someone from belongs to a trade association or a chamber or something like that. A couple of things just to consider as you build your list. Consider location. Are you likely to attract, or seeking to attract someone from another state who have to relocate? Are you willing to pay for relocation expenses? Some organizations, obviously, are national scope and want to do a national search. It's fine. Other people, could be from, Iowa, Des Moines, and want someone that knows the culture of Iowa or something. Someone needs a culture of New York State or Florida or California or Texas, wherever. So a lot of times people want someone who knows your kind of culture and how they will fit in here. And I just say build a target or so of 50 some organizations and distribute the list of target organization to members of your committee and have them follow up with each organization. That's again what you're doing if you're not using a search firm. Using a search firm, they're going to do all this for you. Well, they're going to do all this for you, take your anxiety away. You're going to be involved in the process. You're going to be involved in the process of identifying where you're going as an organization, the competencies you need, the skills and experiences, and they're going to put the post together the profile, but they're going to do all that candidate outreach, and that's what they get paid for. That's what you're doing here. But if you want to do it by yourself, you can try it. But that's what, yeah. Okay. So now you have a search committee, and you have identified obviously the competency skills, and you've been outreaching on to candidates. You're going to start the interview process. So these days, it's most likely you're going to interview the candidates some type of virtual. We use Zoom. I will tell you that before COVID, we did everything in person back then, and I honestly was kind of critical of people that did things virtually. I said, how would you possibly know if they're going to fit in chemistry-wise your organization? I learned the lesson. We use virtual, and so most, if not all, of our searches are done virtually. I mean, we certainly at times and will visit your organization if necessary, but a lot of times everything is done virtually from our end. So I'll go over this here. Certainly you're going to interview people on Zoom, but when you're going to start to decide one or two people that you're really serious looking at, you definitely need to invite them into your organization and things like that, and all that. That's done person to person here. But some questions that you want to develop, and we have an ideal matrix that we recommend to our clients with a whole range of questions. But these are the categories anyway. Questions about leadership, strategic thinking. How are they with interpersonal relationships? Asking questions, So can you tell us, how you build a relationship with people and things like that? You want to talk about, their achievements. You want to talk about how well have you worked with the board? What's the most challenging thing you've had with a board, or something like that? Ask questions. Communication. How do you communicate verbally? How do you communicate in writing? Things like that. Philanthropy. Most, if not all, but most organizations need to have a culture of philanthropy, which is beyond the scope of today, to raise money. So what's been your experience with fundraising? If there's little experience, that's a challenge for you if that's what you need. Most people do need it. How well have you developed other leaders? A good sign of a good leader today is someone who can mentor and coach and develop leaders within your organization. The problem that most organizations have is they don't develop leaders internally. We do a lot of leadership development for organizations beside our search practice, and I always say this to people: how many of you have a strategic plan to achieve your goals and objectives? Everybody raises their hand. Sometimes it's stale and in need of revitalization. Sometimes you just completed it. And then how many of you have a plan to increase donors and dollars? People raise their hand. I said, how many of you have a plan to make sure you stay in your mission and budget financially? Everybody raises their hand. And how many of you have a plan to develop tomorrow's leaders from within your organization? How many of you have an active plan of developing leaders from your organization? Most people don't, which is outside the scope of this, but that's just kind of amazing to me. Okay. You want to allow candidates to ask questions. I always tell candidates to have at least 2 questions if they go to the committee, because whatever the reason, the psychologist, people say, well, I'm good, I don't have any questions. It perceives that not interest, even though they might have answered every question. On your committee, when you're asking questions, and I want to cover this, let's say you've got 5 members of the committee, and you develop 10 or 12 questions you want to ask these candidates, because the first interview is probably going to be an hour. First thing you want to do is make them welcome. Welcome them, make them feel, make them feel that they've been, make them comfortable. So you ask them, softball question, nice to meet you. Maybe introduce yourselves as members of the committee. Why don't you and ask them to give a little background, but tell them to please limit it to 5 minutes, even 3 minutes. I've seen people ask them, tell us about yourself, and it's like 2 hours later, and you bored everybody to death. But have each member of the committee ask a question, take turns. So go around the table at 1 question. Okay, next is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Have those questions obviously predetermined. But you want to certainly allow members of the committee to ask a follow-up question. The candidate may have answered a question or responded. Have them, follow up. I just want the committee follow up on that. What do you mean about this? Things like that here. I said here, the first round of meetings are almost always, today is virtual, and final candidates are in person. You want to invite them in. People often ask, what's a recommended process? Let's say you've got 2 candidates. with the 201, you want to invite them into a couple of things. Meet the members of the leadership team, maybe for an hour. Have a cup of coffee with them, or just cold drink in the room in the boardroom. Just have meet them so they can interact with you a little bit. Maybe meet with the board chair or the search committee chair, 1 or 2 people on the board. Have them come out and meet with the whole board and maybe introduce themselves and want to give a vision for their vision for your organization. Have a chance to kind of interact like that, and some people do it that way. Some people invite them for dinner and drinks and stuff like that, and make it. It depends. But clearly, you got to want to see them and interact with them in person prior to making any final offer decision here. Just go over a couple of the do's and don'ts of the process here. Just a couple of things here. And again, for those of you that have joined us midway here, everybody will receive a copy of the slides and everybody will receive a copy of the recording. A couple of things here. Come prepared. Don't, for the first time in the interview, don't be the first time in 2 minutes you're looking at their resume or cover letter. Take a cold Snapple iced tea. I'm addicted to this stuff here. Introduce yourself and your names. I don't go too far into it, but introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Gregory Jones, member of the board. Things like that. I said also, part of it is determine which questions you want to ask them, and that's you're going to be interviewing candidates, and so you want to make sure you have the questions that you agree to. We, as a firm, obviously give you some suggestions, but you determine which questions you want. Again, on average, if you're interviewing someone for an hour, you make 12 questions, about maybe 5 minutes for each question. But you want to allow questions and answers and things like that. So that's kind of about it a little bit. You want the questions to be open-ended, not yes or no. You want them to be thought-provoking. So how would you handle this situation? Or can you tell us about the most difficult situation leadership you had and how did you handle it? Can you tell us about something you did that didn't work out well and what did you learn from that? So have kind of thought-provoking questions. Not like here, and certainly you do not want to ask questions that just say yes or no. Okay. Make sure you're listening to the candidates when they're answering your questions. Maybe it's my wife is always home. If you're talking too much, you don't have time to listen, but make sure you listen to what they have to say here. This should be a two-way exploration. Determine if this is a good fit. This is all about fit and chemistry. I mean, most likely by the time you're interviewing people, you've agreed that they have the background, the experience, prior experience, the skills, hopefully, to do the job. And people can learn the skills. The skills you can learn. It's hard to learn competencies at this stage in life. Here's something that's very important for the search committee. Make a positive impression on the candidate, even if you feel that you're not going to recommend them moving forward here. Remember, because they're going to go away with how positive experience about your organization through that meeting. So even if you knew within 5 minutes he or she is not our candidate for whatever reason, make sure you leave a positive and then let them know that how you will get in touch with them or how the search committee will get in touch with them. Okay. I just say use DCM, but thank everybody and let them know how you're gonna, and let them, they should know the process and timetables. It's also sort of said, but clearly confidentiality is a major issue. When people give you resumes and that it's very confidential, you have liability if for some reason their boss or their employer found they were seeking, they lost their job, you could be liable. It's really important to keep confidentiality. One of the reasons, so sometimes, a lot of times, that if you try to do this yourself, the reason why people will not submit their resume to you is because people in the organization will know it and they're afraid of confidentiality. So those are some of the do's. Now, what are some of the don'ts? Now, I know these are common sense, but first of all, you want to check your employment in each state. Just Google, Connecticut employment laws. And you can see an example here. In Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, where we've done a lot of work, you can ask someone, what do you currently make it? In most places, you can't. Now, you want to avoid questions. I know you do know this, but I have to tell you this about birth date, age, marital status, children, gender and disabilities, nationality. You gotta, I see someone joining us. We're almost over, halfway through. It's that, avoid that, okay? Don't ask about current salary or criminal history or credit scores. You can have that checked out later at a later time, criminal history, if you want, if that's important to you. Certainly, many times it is, but that's a separate issue here. But I would avoid asking about current. Now, what you should do, though, clearly, is early on in the process, what we do is we will discuss with you, what your salary range is. I'm just going to make something up here. So you say it's we're probably looking at 140, but maybe 160. I'm just giving an example here. Could be lower, could be higher. So when we're screening candidates, we might say, in a state, we can ask you, so what kind of compensation, what kind of salary you'd be looking for? And say, well, I'm looking for something like, 180, 190, 200. We know it's not going to fit in. It's not going to fit in here. So you can ask, kind of what are you kind of thinking about in salary with something? I mentioned about state laws. You should know your state laws if you're doing this on your own here. But clearly, shut off your phone. Don't read text messages. It's just people can see it, and it's just it's not professional. So just those are some of the don'ts. Okay, I mean, I remember this a couple of years ago in a live or in an in-person interview when a woman came in a few minutes late. She says, I'm sorry, I had to drop my daughter from school. And people said, well, how many kids do you have? Just avoid that stuff. Okay. All right. So you've interviewed people. You got your committee together. You have a chair. You've done outreach on your own, maybe, or certainly with a search committee. And then you've begun the process of interviewing candidates. But one of the other tools that are available for you that we use, because you want to make sure there's, certainly chemistry, cultural fit is important, but there are assessment tools that help you measure core leadership and personality traits. And I'm going to share a sample of what we do. Okay. We use, and again, this might be hard to see this here, but we partner with a firm called Telexis of Talent Solutions, and our candidates will take this. Takes about 45 minutes to fill out questions here, but there's a job. How do I say this? There's a success pattern for each major job. Okay, so if you're going to be a CEO, executive of a nonprofit organization, there's certain success patterns. If you're going to be the sales of an automobile dealership, there's different success patterns. So we don't do that. Our work that we do is exclusively committed to the social impact organizations around the country here. But it's going to give you a little summary, but it's going to help you identify kind of core traits of thinking, measure manageability, people contact, attitude, take charge, sense of urgency, etc., competitiveness. We had a client not too long ago that said, geez, you're sending us people, we want people with 10s. No, you don't. You don't want people on the far right at the extreme or far low. You want people in that category here. That's 5, 6, or 7 is what you're looking for. That's where the core. That's where the balance is. And you can have lower scores, but you can explain it here. So here's an example here. We've seen a lot of people with a low sense of urgency, but they're really good on accuracy and precision. So they could focus in on accuracy and precision to lower their sense of urgency. You got someone's sense of urgency, it's really high. That's what I need. I need a real kind of go-getter. But they could also sometimes not focus on accuracy and precision here. So our tools we use, and there's other tools out there if you like, but it gives you a description about them, but it also gives you a couple of questions. In this case, this is sort of Sarah sample. Her take charge is pretty high. It says Sarah may be reluctant to follow the direction of others. She prefers to act as a leader on her own. She has a strong need to be a leader in most situations and may be forceful in doing so. That's a tough one. That's a red flag to me a little bit. She's very comfortable being assertive, and she may seem too pushy at times. So that's a red. Now you get his questions. Has there ever been a time if you're interviewing someone but speaking up about your ideas has gotten you in trouble? Tell me about a situation you had to defend the decision you made, even though you thought you made it unpopular at the time. Tell a situation in which you had to remain silent about a problem, even though you believed you had the best solution. There are things like that here. So those are some tools that are available to you, and they're helpful to you. Okay, references. You're going to want to define who you want references from. Okay, you do not. This is not just give me the names of 3 people that you play cards with on Friday night. We ask for references someone if you work for. It could be someone that has been a CEO if you're in an executive team. Could be a former board member, but someone you ask for someone they work for. You want someone they work with, a peer. Okay. In a CEO case, it could be challenging because it could be a board member of a previous organization or an executive. Could be also be someone. I'm sorry. It could be someone from maybe the traders or the board they sit on in another organization. But certainly, then a reference from someone who worked with them, or with them, and who worked for them. So someone they work for, like a board member or CEO, someone they work with, and someone who worked for them. And we provide obviously written references and reports on that. But that's important to do a reference check. If you want, there are firms we don't do that, criminal background checks and things like that, and it's important to you. It could be, and if you hire a firm to do that, it's not that expensive here. These again some suggested questions that we would use in a reference check. How long have you known the candidate? In what capacity? What was their reputation in the organization or in the community? Where does he or she excel? Is there any sense of improvement or development that you notice on the individual? Would you hire them? And would you hire them again if they work for you? Is there any reason to give us pause in presenting as a candidate? I got to tell you, this is. I know we're getting a few minutes late, but this is. I'll never forget this. And this goes back almost. Let's see here. This goes back over 30 years ago. I was a young 38-year-old CEO of a medical center just a few years ago, for people that know me. And I'll never forget this. We had to recruit for a head of our foundation. I'm pretty sure we did it ourselves. I don't remember how. I don't remember. But there was 2 candidates. And I'll never forget this. This is weird. You have those moments you just can't forget something. So it was a young woman who was really very talented, but I wanted 2 things. I'm young, and how much training and development did she need? I need someone to take it over. And I had an older gentleman who worked for a similar type of hospital and had a lot of experience. So I was kind of leaning towards the older gentleman, and I asked him to provide me with references. Don't ask me why. He provided me with 10 references. 10. And don't ask me why. Truthfully, I called all 10. The first 6 were like, well, firstly, 5, 6, or he walked on water. Like, Jesus Christ, superstar. There's nothing wrong. I swear, in that order. I'll never forget. I got to like 7 or 8, and I started saying, "Are you telling me you're kind of uncomfortable with him?" And I was like, "Yeah, in a way, yeah." And I swear to God, I got to 9 and 10 in that order. And they said, I wouldn't hire him. And he lost the job, and the other one got the job and obviously did extremely well. But it just shows to show you that, it's important to dig into these people, and there's nothing wrong with people and ask people in the community, hey, do you know Jane or do you know John? You know anything about him? And it's confident and confident to see what they know. That's references here. Negotiating the offer. If you're using a search firm, I would recommend they do it for you. We do it a lot. Kind of avoid, this debate or arguing over $5,000 or 3 vacation days or car allowance, things like that. But if you want to, just make sure you're ready to offer someone the job. If you haven't done it before, negotiating a job can be intimidating. And negotiating is more of an art than a skill. Be prepared to know your upside and downside of where you can go here. But there's some very positive steps you can take to land your CO. Certainly, before you get to this process, your candidate's going to know the salary package you're seeking, or you want to have a conversation with them, or the search committee can do that for you. But certainly, kind of know what your range is, and then obviously, work together in getting that done. And again, a search committee will do this if you want. I recommend, it's 50-50. Some people do it on their own, which is fine. And but sort of negotiating the offer is important here. The salary range. Have you decided on any kind of sign-on bonus or car allowance or moving for relocating you? You want to come away kind of with a win. You don't start off automatically lowballing the person here. Leave some room for negotiation here, but don't just kind of lowball. Give someone your best offer. This other candidate might be, negotiating a higher salary someplace else here. Negotiation is a two-way street. Listen to their request. Don't come across as stubborn or flexible, but you can't pay someone what you don't have. And then the question really is this here, and we were on a conversation 2 days ago, and let's say the fee was making a fee of $30,000. If you divide that over 5 years, it's dividing by, say, 50 weeks in a year. Forget 52 times 5 is 250. Whatever, it comes out to $100 a week. $20 a day. You got to think about amortizing sort of the search firm fee, but you want to amortize the stuff here. But compensation is important. Salary is the biggest piece. Salary is the biggest piece, but compensation. Everybody's looking for health benefits. So you don't have health benefits, then you're gonna have to figure it out here. We had a client that, had to pay $15,000 just for an individual insurance policy, and so things like that here. At all times, just conduct yourself with integrity and knowledge, and you want to get a signed agreement. You want to have a letter that they sign specifying the position, the approximate start date, and the salary and compensation that they're going to be evaluated and reviewed, at certain points of time, and things like that here. Here's final comments here. Allow them to kind of win. Maybe you can say, listen, we'll review your salary in 6 months, or your raise will be. We're going to give you a little more than we thought, but your next raise is for 18 months, things like that. You want to walk away feeling good. Make sure everything's included in the letter. This is the tough part. You tell them how great they are. We're happy to see you. We're going to pay this kind of money. And then at the end, you say, but, you do serve as an at-will employee, and we could fire your butt anytime we want. I mean, I've seen that recently, and people surprise people, but it's just, you got to put it in your letter sometimes. It's true. Okay. Last piece here. I know we got a few minutes here, but last piece here is very important. 50% or more of nonprofit executives never receive any onboarding. Hey, here's the job, Jane or Jill, Dave, John. Here's the job. Here's your office. You'll be starting, next week or next month. There's the bathrooms down the street, the diners across the street from the building or whatever, and these are the people you're working for. Good luck. Through this process here, you want to make sure that there's a process for people to adjust to your social, cultural, and professional goals in the role. It is no different than a marriage of individuals, people, partnerships. It's an onboarding process. Two companies partner together, individuals partner together, moving in together, sharing stuff. The more time the board invests in the executive's onboarding process, the quicker your new CEO or whoever you're recruiting will be helpful leading your organization successfully. It's really important. This is all part of the process. Things to consider in the onboarding process is that how does the board expect the new CEO to communicate with them and vice versa? How often does the board chair want to meet with the new CEO? Once a month for breakfast? Once a week on the phone, email? How do you want to be kept up to date here? Does the candidate or new person know that the top issue that he or she may face in the first 30 days? Oh yeah, by the way, we're losing $5 million this year. We need you to fix it. What do you want them to achieve in 90 days in the first year? Are there any cultural issues that you think that could be resistant in the organization to change, which is very common? You know, well, we all worked for Joe for 40 years and, you know, Joe's great and no more changes here. I would tell you a lot of stories about this, but when I was the CEO of a medical center, my assistant told me, Dennis, no one here has changed anything in 100 years. I said, oh my God, really? And so I had an uphill battle to communicate and build respect amongst the employees, and had a lot of employee meetings and kind of built the respect there. Are there any internal performance issues that the CEO needs to address? Clearly, you want them to get known in the community. You're going to send that announcement, a press release. I see a question coming up here. Okay, so the question becomes, can the retiring CEO assist in the search process? Yeah, I think they can to an extent, though. Here's what I'd say. Let me finish these questions, and I'll come back. Let me finish that, and I'm going to come back to that. Okay, please remind me. Certainly, who are the stakeholders in the business community and the chambers and CEO, donors, elected officials? Who do you want that person to know? Make sure it's scheduled in the first week or two, you know, interviews or meetings with them, things like that. I don't know who, you know, I want, if you're the board chair, hey, I want you to meet these 10 people, you know, whatever. How will you measure them after a year? How will the board evaluate the CEO? Do you have an evaluation tool? And that you want to make sure that, you know, the onboarding process, you know, benefits your new CEO's experience for many years to come. It's good investment here. So let me go over some of the questions here. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so thanks, Ann. I appreciate your comment. So can the board ask the retiring CEO to assist in the search? They can, but here's the problem with that. I think it's important, and that's a good question. And as I said, you know, it's in my book here. I think your retiring CEO can certainly help the board with names that they may know in the community, clearly. Certainly, you know, be doing outreach if you want. But here's the downside of the retiring CEO being involved in the interview process or selecting the candidates. Let's say you have an internal candidate and your retiring CEO is on your search committee, and the question becomes, so to the candidate, you know, what changes would you make here, if any? Now that person's not going to give you an honest answer. Also, I've seen it where the retiring CEO gives off some level of something, impression that can turn off a prospective member. The key here is that we rely upon the retiring CEO to help us develop the profile. I think it's a big role to play. They know the job better than anybody else. But ultimately, the board hires and fires the CEO. So if you're doing a search on your own, clearly, yes, they can help you identify people. I just be very careful of having this retiring CEO involved in the interview process and selecting that candidate. I've seen it backfire. So generally, the general rule is the board's responsibility is to recruit the candidate. But clearly, your retiring CEO can play a role in helping you identify potential people. The answer is yes. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Just a little bit, there's a little 5 seconds of a commercial bit. If you don't know, please, we're a national firm, started with myself, you know, what is that? 16 years ago, myself, and we have a team now of about 18 people. Go to our website, you know, denniscmiller.com or dcm-associates.com. We do a couple of things here. Certainly, we do a large amount of strategic search. We have a process there and things like that. You can see all that. And then we also have our Institute for Transformational Nonprofit Leader Board Performance. We have very affordable, below $1,000, like very affordable tools to do an annual CEO evaluation. So the board doesn't have to collect and compile things, allows a self-evaluation for the CEO or executive members. Tools to do an online assessment of the board and leadership. We can do all that here. And then all kind of things we have here. I'm just saying. So with 360, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, too fast here. Okay, we have a 360 tool. So not only do we have a tool to evaluate people, but 360 tool, we find it really, really important for a 360 tool to add to your evaluation of how people on the board and or staff or the people report them perceive them. We have 2 online courses: how to become a high performing board, how to become a high performing leadership team, and a whole range of work we do in leadership development, certificate programs, equity and belonging, diversity, and all that kind of stuff. So that's about it. Everybody will receive a copy of the recording. Everybody received the PowerPoint. And as a courtesy for all of you today, when we send the outreach out, you can download a free copy of my book, A Guide to Recruiting Your Next CEO, the Executive Search Process for Non-Profit Leadership Boards. And I also offer you this. Anybody would like a free 30-minute consultation with me, email me. It's dennis.miller@dcm-associates.com. I think I had it once up here. Let's see here. Let's see if I can get my email up here. Back here. Hold on. There it is. So, and you'll get this, dennis.miller@dcm-associates.com. I am very, very happy to answer any question as a courtesy. Is there any final question anybody has at all that anybody would like me to address at this point? Thank you, Tom. If anybody else has anything else? And if not, I thank you for joining us today and look forward to getting to meet you in the road. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.